Greetings and salutations, everyone. Welcome back to the Inn of Planar Crossroads. And as always, travelers, welcome back to our Around the Hearth discussions. This time, we are still in Sci-Fi July, discussing There Are No Aliens. Okay, so last time we talked about there, being aliens in your system and whether you wanted to have them there or not. This time, it's the opposite. What if you don't want aliens in your system? What are some other things you can do? What are your considerations? So, that's what we're going to discuss this time. Before we get into it, let's do announcements and introductions. So, I'll start with me, and then we'll go Dan, Josh, and then Scrat. That's what we'll do. We'll go counterclockwise this time.
Shaking it up.
Yeah. As far as announcements for the Inn of Planar Crossroads, we are finishing. This will be halfway through Sci-Fi July. I'm not sure if I'll have made any new adjustments, but I recently made adjustments as of recording for the TheIoPC.com is what you can type in, or you can go innofplanarcrossroads.com. Either one of those URLs work, and that'll get you to our webpage. I'm going to try fiddling with it some more. That's what I've been doing. Hopefully I can get it worked around where it's at least somewhat more presentable. Right now it's very stripped down and utilitarian, which I'm not against. I would just like to have something nicer for people to look at. So we'll see. We're still trying to get to our $100 per month goal of getting that much support per month so we can make more content, make more quality content, and be able to devote more time to this to refine that content. So there you are. That's what I've got. What you got, Dan?
Hey everybody, Dan from Avenue Studios. You can find us on YouTube, Rumble, and podcasts. We do a lot of actual plays and talking TTRPG content. We should be well into our relaunch of Druid's Table, which I'm wearing the outfit for. So join Jacob and I. We have some shorts coming out as well. Check those out where you can imagine with us. And most importantly, we live stream Wednesdays 9 p.m. Eastern, and in our Force Forge we build a one-shot based off of the discussions we have here, taking some of these ideas and building a one-shot, and then we play test it with some of our supporters. And this one especially, Mr. Moral Compass, he will be GMing the game we play in Sci-Fi July, so I'm very excited for that. And he had to leave us, but he wanted me to remind everyone that After Quest is another show he's involved with on Avenue Studios, along with his and my own beautiful wives, who we love so much. So, that's us.
All right. Josh?
Oh, am I next? Oh, sorry. Hey, I'm Josh from Copper Dragon Games. You can find me on YouTube and copperdragongames.com. And I don't have any announcements. So who's up next?
I think it's me.
Yes.
Sounds
All
good.
right. Scrap from a Squirrel Plays over on YouTube, where we talk about character building, world building, writing stories and stuff. What makes all that goodness good? It can be for your TTRPGs, books, movie scripts, whatever it is you're working on that might involve all that. But we also like to share what the viewers and communities coming up with. Not to break it down or anything, we just think it's cool. We want to share and encourage them and push them out there. So yeah, fun times.
All right.
And I will be shouting out Okayest DM over on YouTube. I say over on as if this isn't all. Anyway, talking about TTRPG things, some 5e things, their own system that they're working on called Sagas. That is a setting agnostic system. Go check them out.
All right. There we go. So that's what we have as far as announcements and Levi's Spotlight, which means it's time to pull up a chair around the hearth and relax while we discuss, with our favorite beverages, There Are No Aliens. At least in this one. At least in this discussion. So, with that being the case, there was a gauntlet thrown down last discussion. Josh said that sci-fi is better without aliens. With aliens, excuse me.
Okay.
Josh said it was with aliens. Always made it better. So, you want my response to that, Josh?
Sure. I guess I will just preface and say, I don't know why you would want the flakes without the frosted, or the Lucky Charms without the marshmallows. Why would you want sci-fi with no aliens?
One word response.
Uh-oh.
Firefly.
So the true question becomes, could Firefly have been improved with aliens? I haven't seen it, so...
So Levi
I
says
want
no.
to say that this is Dan's thing, where the aliens are people.
That's
But I'm like, spoilers, right? Because I don't think you know that.
Yeah, I was just about to ask, so I guess that answers that question. It's been a long time since I've seen it.
Well, it does actually go to the serious part of the discussion of if there are no aliens, there are going to be humans, and that doesn't mean that humans are all going to be the same. So we don't have to avoid spoilers on a 10-year. It's over a decade and plus old, isn't it? So,
and knowing our audience, I would hope most of them have seen it.
But it's been so long, honestly. I think they called them like Marauders or something.
Reavers.
And and I feel like they even knew ahead of time that they were human. Maybe I don't remember.
Well,
Man, I don't either.
Well,
Was it Reavers? Because I get it mixed up with Stargate and the Ravagers, right?
no, it was
Reapers.
Reavers.
Reapers are Atlantis, and then Reavers was Firefly.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
So many things. Okay, yeah.
So, for those a little bit lost, in Firefly, there are no aliens. There's this other thing called the Reavers that is like a group of individuals that are so different because of experiments done on them and the things that happened to them, that they became so different that they are basically alien in the way they think and do. They strap the corpses of their enemies to their starships and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. They are messed up. But it's because of experiments and things. And this is where you can introduce variety into a setting without having to introduce a new species. And we're saying there are no aliens, but you can do the same thing with saying an all-elf space campaign or an all-this orc space campaign or something like that, because aliens could be any of the other races. So if everybody's the same race, it doesn't really matter. But we're going to stay focused, we're going to stay focused with humans. There are always going to be, especially with humans, mutations that happen. And this is actually something that in the real world we would run into with people that grow up on Mars or people that would grow up on asteroid belts. The genetic expression would be so different because your body is trying to grow like you're on Earth, but the environment is so different that you're really not going to look exactly like you would if you were growing on Earth. If you were growing up on Mars, assuming you could make it to adulthood, you're going to be taller. Your muscles aren't going to be as dense. You're going to look like one of them, not like one of them gray men, because that doesn't make sense, because you would still tan. But you're going to
unless you live in an environment where you never get any UV light.
That'd be hard to do because you still need vitamin D. I mean, you desperately need vitamin D if you're living on
you would take
there.
Supplements and then sort of dystopian, trapped off in a place. If you want to make them weirder.
You could, yeah. Because if you were doing that, if they didn't have UV light, their eyes would also get big, round, and dark.
Yeah. This is not like if we tried to properly colonize Mars, what would happen? But if part of your intent here is to make, like, Moon and, like, Martian humans interestingly different, you can take some of these real-world things and just add a little dystopia so they change biologically faster.
A dash of dystopia to disturb you.
Just a dash.
Yeah.
I'm gonna throw out something. Hopefully, I don't derail it too much, but I think this is on topic. And kind of to back up Josh in a sense of we're
Traitor.
crafting. I'm sorry, I love you all. We're crafting aliens effectively, right? Because it is just the other, in a sense. So is this? And I truly don't know the answer. So I'm curious what you guys think. Is this something that is quintessential to sci-fi? That you need that aspect of the other and the clashing of that in there to have this feeling? Because what you're describing is basically kind of crafting aliens with the not quite semantics. They're still all humans, right? But they're so drastically different that we consider them other. Is that maybe a true trope to sci-fi?
Well, okay. I will agree that it is a common trope of sci-fi. And if an important part of your story is specifically interacting with and dealing with and, like, learning about the other, and that is an important part to this, aliens or robots, which are, in a sense, aliens by another name, if we want to go with it, by the same perspective of, like, just intentionally crafting a very physically, mentally different other. But there are plenty of sci-fi stories that are about people within your own same group, just driven to different edges by different current situations and needs. Right? So, like, as opposed to large other groups that you're dealing with, and you have to figure out what ways they're different. If your story is more focusing on, yeah, we're pretty well the same, but, like, these 3 to 5 situational aspects are splitting us. And we could maybe pull closer together. That would be a case where you don't really need aliens, but you also don't need, like, Martian light-deprived humans, or maybe Jupiter super heavy humans.
Well, I don't know that you could colonize. Jupiter's a gas giant, so
yeah. So in this assumption, you're
having
having things that float in it, and you would do, like, a weird ship world. We're talking sci-fi.
Yeah.
It's jank.
Yeah.
Well, I
that's
mean,
kind of
just a real quick shout out too. If you want to know about a really neat ways to colonize, neat ideas and theories about how to colonize this particular solar system, you can look again at Isaac Arthur's science fiction discussions on YouTube again, because he actually has some series on that. How would we colonize the moon? How would we colonize Venus? How would we colonize Mercury and Saturn and all those type of things? And there are ways to do it. The thing is it desirable and feasible? Is one of the problems. I mean, it's more desirable and feasible to colonize the asteroid belt than it is to colonize another planet, because the asteroid belt has a lot of rich resources. I mean, we could build a Dyson sphere out of the stuff in the asteroid belt, and I mean, that's just
the hard part is getting the energy back from the Dyson sphere to us, so you'd more just be running, like, a huge space station as its own place, probably.
Well, you would, I think the way he explains it is that you could use lasers, which is highly directed lasers, because you'd have
no, I get you.
You have no problem with the amount of power you're using, because you're harnessing the entire sun's energy. In fact, you need to get rid of it. And the parts that weren't going
to the Earth anyway.
Yeah. So you have a massive surplus of power.
Yeah.
See, the problem with space is not so much that you can't get power. It's that, how are you going to use it once you have it?
Yeah.
So.
So I think another angle to take aliens versus no aliens in the TTRPG sphere is, what system are you playing? If you're playing Starfinder or Pathfinder, Pathfinder's not sci-fi, but they have like tech supplements, so you can like make it up to that, right? If you are playing a system where there are specific, interesting choices around the species, ancestry, race, alien word here, telling everyone that they all have to choose the same one feels like you are taking something away, making the game more boring to people.
It's a psychological thing, yeah.
Yeah, and that's not strictly bad. Plenty of people have had great all-dwarf parties, or like a world where it's like, there's pretty well only humans. Luckily, in a lot of these humans, it's like, hey, pick a feat, pick skills. You may all be the same, but you've still got choices. So that's one thing to caution about, as opposed to a more, like, points-based or a system. Like, Open Legend doesn't care what race, species, ancestry, alien, whatever you are when you start into it. Because any racial species... I'm going to stop using all the different words for it. Because I notice myself keep on doing it. I'm like, I don't have to. So, whatever you choose in that realm, however much of that as you want to apply to your character and you want to be important, you take the points to make it happen. So in that, it doesn't feel like you're restricting them at all to say, hey, there are humans, there are elves, there are dwarves, and that's all we got. Build your whatever in this system, so it feels less restrictive.
What would you guys say, too? I'm thinking about one of the things you potentially do when you remove aliens is removing a potential conflict. It's restricting your narrative tools as well. And so what would be... Sorry, go ahead.
It only restricts them to the idea that you necessarily need aliens for conflict, which... Right. With humans, you really don't. We're really good at being conflicted with people.
Yes, 100% agree. So, and that kind of leads into what's the replacement then? Because you also maybe a qualifier. Are we including alien animal life? As in, no aliens.
Like, are you saying does it have to be playable for us to consider it for the discussion? Is that what you're saying?
Right. Because I think of like us, I've always liked the idea of the pitch black setting, the precursor to Riddick. And so that is alien, it's an alien life form, but it's not they're creatures. So should we also remove that from the discussion too as well? Or is that something that supplements? Because the other thing I've been thinking about as we're talking about this is it reminds me, there's a lot of things and we kind of mentioned this in the Western, there's a lot of tropes in sci-fi that could match with the Western, because space, the final frontier, that whole aspect of one of the things you can do in sci-fi is the clashing with trying to get resources, we talked about a little bit, but also dealing with your ship breaking down in the middle of space. I don't know if you'd say space wants to kill you, or we're really not meant to live in space, so any problems out there are very serious and you're on the edge. There's a lot of similar vibes there, which is why I think we had talked about the Western sci-fi stuff. So I wonder if my inclination is, okay, if I'm removing aliens as a potential narrative tool, I'm probably going to be dealing with like large groups or military groups that are fighting over resources. I'm dealing with survival. Maybe they're, if you have some interstellar travel, you're setting up that kind of network, and maybe you're one of the frontiers that goes out and it's a survival game, or it's exploration, X-Base, where you're exploring these whole new planets you've never seen. And that would get into the animal and plant life, which is still alien, but you're not dealing with sentient alien life.
Well, I think it would go back to what we discussed before on whether it's intelligent design. It depends on how far into the Fermi paradox you're going to go and what the origin of your universe is. So the Fermi paradox is the idea that if intelligent aliens did exist, we would have evidence of them by now, type of thing. And they're always looking for different ways to try and figure out the Fermi paradox and how it might work, how you might work that out. I don't personally think there's aliens, but you could, with your universe, still have, if you wanted to, you could still have animal life and not have intelligent life. If you have intelligent design. Now, if you don't have intelligent design, I really don't see how you wouldn't logically, if you're thinking this big, if your story is big enough that you're going to be crossing the universe and having to think about whether they're going to come in contact with these things, then if evolution works in your universe, then you probably could
it'd be one of those, the assumption would be that if you have all of these other places teeming with life, and, like, sentient brains to the point of space travel existed once, by the law of large numbers, it should happen again.
But yeah, it would have to. And not rare. Like, that's one of the things with the Fermi paradox is,
yeah,
if we evolved, and then evolution is a force working throughout the universe, not just here, we should be able to see, because we didn't evolve in a bubble, and they wouldn't either. Yeah. So, and you can't really argue for time differences, because everything would be continually evolving at the same time. So you run into that when you're world building. But if you're not world building,
the time differences would be how soon different things cooled down, whether or not meteors hit spots, and then meaningfully, if you are in sci-fi but not with, like, interstellar travel, just, hey, there might be sentient life other places, but they can't reach here because that's not how space works. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, it depends, because you were already assuming a few things with intergalactic travel, so...
Right.
Whatever you're doing in your system.
We are assuming intergalactic travel. Though maybe intelligent species wipe themselves out eventually.
That is one of the proposed solutions to the Fermi paradox.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily hold with it, but if your system does, if your setting does, that's okay.
And this is definitely, like, these solutions to the Fermi paradox are kind of like educated guesses. Like,
yeah,
they don't
even rise to the level of hypothesis, because
there's no way to test them.
Yeah, you're just kind of guessing. So,
it's like, yeah.
But that's that.
Which is why we hold the power as game masters.
For sure.
See, I guess that actually goes into the idea of there's always going to be an intelligent designer in your game. It's you.
Because you're running.
It's you. Yeah.
So
that's true.
You're never going to play a game without an intelligent designer. So you may as well...
just a designer. I mean,
it could be a really bad game.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah. That's true.
There are degrees of intelligence.
Yeah.
And I'm speaking about myself.
You have strung together sentences tonight. You have some degree of intelligence.
So there's that to consider. So it basically is up to you what you want in your system. A fair warning, don't be too realistic with it. And this is from me, a guy who's like, if you want aliens, if you want realism about it, that's cool. And I actually do want to play a sci-fi where there's a bit more realism in it. We're kind of maybe expanding out into this particular galaxy that we're in, because that's fun, a fun idea to go within this even solar system. But I'm reminded of the game No Man's Sky. And No Man's Sky had a bunch of stuff at launch that didn't work. And that's understandable. I'm actually not talking about that. I'm talking about before that. When they were making the game, they plugged it in basically like you plug in the universe. They basically looked at the laws of physics and, all the stuff like that. And they said, okay, computer, we're going to build a thing, a model, basically, and have it stretch out like a Big Bang type of thing, and, all that stuff. And they said, then we'll see what life comes up in it. It actually would have been a really good one to look at because they plugged in evolution as the main motivator and stuff like that, the main driver of species development. It was dead. There was nothing in it because the numbers of it wouldn't have worked out. And this is a very simplified model. They actually had to go in and intelligently design and tweak things. And that's where people started to have problems with it too, because so much looked similar. Well, that's because so many things are favored in the pathways that are presented in the scientific theory of evolution that are necessary for the progress of life. So you're going to run into that. Don't run into that problem. I'm trying to warn against that problem. If you want to have Riddick style, because Riddick's cool. Well, it's Pitch Black is the name of the
Pitch Black, yeah,
movie. It's the best of the 3 Riddick movies. Pitch Black type of sonar based critters that they've got to fight. Cool, do that. And if you want to, you can even do it far into the future where humans basically the same, because we like to keep ourselves in an Earth-like environment. But these animals, maybe these animals we brought to this planet are escaped. They get out of their containment or something like that. They'll just go wild because there's no predators. And so then this is, you can actually look to the ecology of settling different islands, uninhabited islands on the Pacific and Atlantic, and see how introducing one species meant you had to introduce another to try and combat it. And then you had this whole terrible ecological balance that you were having to work through and stuff like that. And this is where you get the idea of seeding a planet instead of just bringing people to it. So seeding bacteria onto Mars seeding a bunch of different things onto Mars would change its surface at a more balanced rate than other things would, but you still run into the problem of survival. So don't make it too hard. Don't make it too hard.
Unless you have a group of very specifically science nerds.
Yeah.
Right. If you are like engineer work buddies, and you afterwards, and you're all in that headspace, and you all have like a broad knowledge of like a fair number of types of science, like specifically in this case, I'm thinking building sciences for like the terraforming and fixing up your spaceship in specific semi-realistic ways. If you're all that headspace, great. Have fun. Lovely. I don't know enough about like electrical engineering. Like when at work the repairman comes and he shows me the wires and he starts talking about things, he assumes I understand things. I'm like, no, step back 3 steps. All right. I didn't go to
I hit the power button and it turns on.
Yeah.
That's all I need to know.
Well, and I know that when I open the door, if the ones are instead of straight up, they're to the left, that means they tripped, and I need to flip them back and flip them all the way back up. But I'm not touching the wires. I know that much. And there's little buttons, and you can hit those to reset if it's really funky. But I don't know enough. I have some broad understandings, some different type of science, but not enough to play in this sort of hyper-realistic, I'm gonna look for a meteor with the right type of thing so I can rebuild my laser, so I can weld my spaceship.
Come on! Don't you want a space sim?
It seems interesting, and the thing is, I think there are people who would love that. They'd have like a wonderful time having a space sim tabletop. Like all the stats are there. It's roughly accurate, like pretty accurate, and it's more decision-based than role-based. Right? And the GM is mostly just throwing in the problems, kind of like old-school dungeon builders.
Yeah.
Where instead of like a lot of that other narrative, you're doing that. That is a great game for some people, but just know whether or not you're those people.
Yeah. And don't feel bad if you're not, because, it's a recreational
kind of
activity.
Or you could have a Wall-E type setting. Where
Wow.
You could have a Wall-E type setting.
too long. There's one
I
with
have
no
to say,
aliens.
playing as a couple robots trying to save the humans
That would
could be fun.
Yeah.
It has some merit.
Yep.
Although that could get in semantics. Are the robots the aliens? We already kind of touched on that.
Yeah, this was more just a side thing.
Yes,
We're
yeah.
talking Wall-E. I want to...
I wouldn't consider
'cause it's-
Wall-E aliens, but yeah, I get what you're
Yeah,
saying.
yeah.
No, they're not actually aliens, but in the sense of the earlier discussion point of if we are making these other things, we are doing that same basic concept. And if we are doing this,
Right.
there is some room for the concept of aliens as opposed to they are actually aliens.
And do remember, you can still get a lot of variety within humans via cyborgs,
Yeah.
mutants, all that type of stuff.
Yeah.
Dune's a great setting too. I
Right.
would be interested in that.
Dune's a great setting with only, Dune the first book is only humans. So, and Dune the second book is only humans too. I haven't got past that. But Dune the first and second book are only humans. Now it is sci-fantasy kind of,
Yeah.
especially in the second book. The first book tries to make it seem like it's sci-fiction, but it really does lean into the fantasy part later in the second book and stuff. So, all right, we're pretty close to our time. So this time, I guess since he's been so quiet, we'll let Scrat go first with his final thoughts, then do me, then Dan, then Copper, and then Levi.
I never know how to jump in. That's why I never say anything.
Oh.
But, so we were sitting here talking about this. I kind of realized where my preference lies. And you can tell me whether this counts as no aliens or not. So I like the settings, stories where there's no aliens, but you're in an alien place. So I brought up that alien game, Fireteam Elite. Granted, you're shooting those aliens, but they're more like monsters than aliens. So if you can just kind of put them to the side for the minute, the story is you're finding the ruins of the engineers for the first time. So you have no idea what's going on. All that is very alien to you, but it's kind of spooky. You have no idea what's going on. Super Metroid Prime, kind of. You're the odd person on the planet. It's mostly just creatures there, not so much intelligent life. So kind of that eerie, spooky setting. So I don't know, does that count as no aliens if you're exploring a dead alien ruin?
Well, going back to our Fermi paradox thing, if technology, if societies, if intelligent enough societies basically kill themselves off eventually, and that's the solution to the Fermi paradox, then it's very possible that you could come across these ancient civilizations. And yeah, I would consider that if everybody in the current time is human, quote, quote, then I could still consider that an all-human, there are no aliens type of thing, because you're still working with the understanding that you are. It's kind of like the spectrum thing. So
I like that general setting too. That's very fun.
And then the other thing was somebody mentioned having aliens there for conflict, and I got to my brain went off on a tangent. I got to thinking the 3 original Star Wars movies. If you made those without any aliens in them, like Jabba the Hutt was just a human crime lord dude.
Yeah.
Big
Instead
fat
of a big
human
slug.
dude.
Like, it would
Use the
still
original
work.
footage. It's a guy in a costume from the original before they CG. Yeah, you're totally right though. You're totally right.
Yeah. And then the Ewoks could be like, what is that island out there that nobody's allowed to go to? Because every time they do, they die in the real world.
Oh,
I know what you're talking about, but I don't know the name.
Yeah, every time somebody shows up, all these guys show up on the beach with bows and arrows that are like 3 feet long or something, and they all get skewered.
Yeah.
That could have been the Ewoks.
might be more legit than the Ewoks killing stormtroopers. As much as I love the originals.
Yeah.
That's all I got, though.
Okie dokie.
That's good.
Well, I guess it's to me then. I'll throw out something. We threw out Aliens for the Alien one last time, and I think it does still work, since technically, if you don't include the precursors, then the aliens are just a breed of biological weapon animal. They're not intelligent. They're not building spaceships. They're just critters to blow up. They're war critters. So that still works in an all human, or that concept still works in an all human thing, like Scrat was pointing out. I also want to point out Blade Runner. It's very sci-fi, but there's no other technical. If you want to get technical, Cameron merged the two settings with Blade Runner having the Wayland Corporation, or whatever it is, that was after the aliens in 2049. So they both exist in the same universe. But in the original Blade Runner, they weren't connected, to my knowledge. So you just had replicants, and they were fighting. These replicants were fighting wars on the belts of Orion and stuff like that. And it really lends a lot of power to the statement that the last replicant says when it's that Tears in the Rain monologue. It'll all disappear. All the things I've seen will disappear like tears in rain. And that moment there happens without aliens, but there's still the other idea. Clones, replicants, this conflict between understanding what it means to be human, which is something that a lot of sci-fi really wants to tag into, but they do it sloppily. You don't need a bunch of crazy things to figure out what it means to be human. You just have to be one. So that's my final thought. What you got, Dan?
That's nice. I have a thought that kind of bounces off my last thought, and I wanted to save it for this because it's a little cheating, but just an idea that I really like and I haven't gotten a chance to play with. And again, not an original idea. Other people have done it. And so comment below if you've used this before or how you think you would use it. Having a not terribly advanced civilization that is run by aliens that they worship. Come to find out, those aliens are just advanced humans. They're just humans with more advanced technology that have elevated themselves to a godlike status. I love that concept. There's been a couple other people who've done that. I'd love to run a game in that kind of world where you have a clash of like a medieval-esque society that worships these beings, but it ends up being just advanced. It's just humans who are advanced and have let them, serve them in some way, probably collecting resources or something like that.
So, kind of like the Stargate movie without the brain slugs.
Yeah, kind of. Mm-hmm.
Gotcha.
For sure. I can't remember. There's one book/movie where it has that explicitly, and I can't remember it, but, it goes back to that whole, technology is advanced enough. But, so that would be, it's a fun thing. I would love to surprise players with it, see where that would go. And that could definitely lean into that idea of what does it mean to be human, because There's that idea of these, the lesser humans they're just fodder. They're just slaves. Something less than human because they're not as advanced, and play with that concept in your game. That would be really fun. I'd love to. Or if you've done it before, I'd love to hear how it went too.
All right. What you got, Josh?
Well, I feel like everybody's going real deep on this concept, and I just want to keep it shallow and say I'm not convinced. I think all these ideas are great, but would be better with aliens.
Firefly would not be better with aliens. I reject your statement.
I think it would be better with aliens. I think the Expanse would be awful without the proto-molecule. I think the Stargate would be awful. Even like the movie would be awful if you found out that the Egyptian god was just a dude with better technology and not the brain slug. Like all the
I think the Scrat's the only one that's offered an opposing idea with Star Wars.
I mean, I think I'm not interested in realistic medieval reenactment like movies and literature. If I see something medieval, I'm looking for the dragons. You know what I mean? Like that's where the fun is for me. And I think I see sci-fi the same way. If I see sci-fi, I'm looking for the aliens. Like that's where the entertainment is for me. And I'm just gonna plant my flag. I think it's better with that fantastical element, no matter what, hands down.
Okay, so my final thought will be trying to fancify the concept that you just portrayed, because I like speaking fancy when I can.
All right.
It's just something. So in this case, right, part of what you were saying is that an important part of the media to you is breaking away and escaping from the world as we understand it and as we know it. And for you, more breaks and more escapes is just better. Like, that is a core goal of why you play, why you watch your media. And there's a point that adding aliens to your world, just even if they're just a reskinning, makes your world feel more different. Obviously, you can definitely add the variety through other ways, but it is a quick and efficient method of doing so. There is a point that if you are trying to tie your game into more realistic, interpersonal, what we have now, but more extreme as your narratives, those aliens, that escapism, that fantastical extras could detract from that sort of plot, though that's not the sort of plot you're personally going for.
Maybe.
Am I wrong? Because I could be misunderstanding here.
I think I feel like I need to digest that for a minute.
Now he's having to examine himself, not just the statements.
I think you can tell. I think the type of story that you want to tell and the things that you want to emphasize in the telling of that story are not. I think the cast and the props of your setting, which is essentially what you get from adding aliens, whether they're like essential cast members or whether they're props like they're used often in, say, Star Wars, right? Mm-hmm. I think those are... I think you can tell the same types of stories, whether it's discovering humanity, whether it's focusing on interpersonal relationships, whether it's focusing on whatever, with different props, in the same way that you can tell the story of Hamlet in Shakespeare's version versus in Disney's version with lions. Right? Like, the essential part of the plot is still there, even if the trappings are very different.
I And a point I would make here is that so when we're looking at The Lion King and you're looking at Hamlet, right? It is the same plot, but I feel like if you're not trying to, it is easier to not take the same lessons away from The Lion King than it is Hamlet. I feel like because of the abstraction, because of the separation, it is easier to not focus on those elements, even if the plot is the exact same, because it is more abstracted from yourself. Which is why Hamlet is a story for adults, and The Lion King is a show we show to kids.
So I think the big question then would be, at the end, does it matter whether you ask the "what's the moral of the story" question, or whether you're just having fun with your storytelling media, or?
Well, I mean, in Hamlet and The Lion King, it matters, but I mean, in your tabletop games, there's not always a moral. You guys are just playing a game.
Yeah, it depends on your focus. And to clarify, I'm not saying with Aliens that you can't tell good and important stories, but it adds more otherness. And it's not, for one, definitely not a better or worse thing most of the time, but I feel like that lends itself to a different type of story more strongly. Like, you can more quickly connect to other types of stories. Not that you can't do other types of stories. Just that if your focus is a specific story beat, it might be more strongly or resonantly told with a different proper cast, or different props or different cast.
I'll throw out to bring it back to gaming too. I think, and I can't remember if Levi, you said this conversation or last conversation, is the session 0 then, because you make the perfect example of making sure when you come to the table and the game that the players are all on board. Because if I just say, "Hey Josh, I'm playing a sci-fi game," and I don't have any aliens, I might be a little disappointed at the end.
Oh man,
yeah.
Oh man, I can't.
But that idea,
psychic guy,
right? Finding out, we talk about it almost every chat, but it's so important. We are specifically looking at it from running a tabletop game with a group, wanting to make sure everyone's on the same page as best as we humans can to get real, but be on the same page and know what are the expectations, and utilizing the subversion or leaning into of those expectations to emphasize whatever story you're trying to tell, or just simply, like Levi's saying too, to just have some fun as well.
Yeah. And I think so a lot of times when I say things, I see it written out in my head. Thinking back over some of my word choice in what I said, I do think that I downplayed the narrative potential of it too much. Right? I was talking about using it as otherwise escapism, which, I feel you definitely can if that is a goal. Right? If you have a goal of just an escapist thing, that is potential. But I think I put more weight on that than was justified, which is, I think, part of why you were having some of the reaction to it, and I'm thinking about it myself, and that's probably not a fair portrayal of it.
It's not wrong though what you're saying too. That
yeah, and I hope I didn't come across as being feeling a certain kind of way just because my.
I do.
Yeah,
aliens.
It's totally all good.
Yeah.
I'm not feeling defensive. It's all good.
I dislike being wrong.
Well,
and I felt like I was wrong.
No,
So I felt like not wrong in a moral sense, but in an accuracy sense. I am the type of person.
Technically accurate thing. Technically.
Yeah, but I feel like in this case, I feel like I misconstrued your point somewhat, and that bugged me because I like being as correct as possible, not just feeling correct, but being correct.
All right.
That's why I like.
We
talking
gotta
with you
wrap
guys.
up.
Sorry.
Can
So-
we just keep talking about Hamlet and Lion King? No, I'm just
Lion
kidding.
All right. Well, that would have to be on a different chat because this one is well past wrapped up. We hope you've enjoyed. We hope you now see, unlike Josh, that you don't need aliens to run a cool sci-fi game. But go ahead and let us know. I guess the comment for this one is Josh wants aliens. So, there you go. That's the comment for this time. And as always, travelers, have a great day. God bless and enjoy. Bye.
Bye.
This content was made possible by travelers and viewers like you. Thank you.
All right, Josh. Now I've got to convince you that aliens don't always make it better.
I have some comments, but I feel like I need to save them for when we're recording.
Oh, fair enough. Fair enough.